So yesterday I made the point that the night that Chris Cornell died, when the bodyguard who was in the room with him for an uncertain amount of time, the only testimony we ever got about that was Kirsten's word in a report about how long he was in the room. And the head investigator in some interview saying that he watched the tape and it happened just like he said it did. That's all we got. When questioned about anything, that's what Mr. Weaver, the head investigator, basically said. We watched the tape and it happened like he said it did. And again, why can't we watch the tape? Because the tape would only show two guys walking into a hotel room, and one guy walking out after a certain amount of time. What is wrong with releasing that? Does that footage even exist? Does anyone still have it? Who the hell knows? Who knows if it ever existed? Because I'm not so sure. Why wouldn't they release that? It's really not a big deal. But it would tell us exactly how much time the other man in the room was in the room with the rock star. I'd like to know that information, and I don't want to trust the person that was in the room, and I don't want to trust the head investigator that retired like 6 months later after open and shutting the case and not even getting forensics tested, which he also admitted in an interview, as if that's just standard fucking procedure. It certainly isn't, especially a death of that magnitude, where, you know, a lot of people have a lot of things to gain by a death of that magnitude. You know, people in that person's life inherit everything that person had. And you never know what could happen in situations like when money's involved. Human beings do some very terrible things. And I believe that's been clearly shown throughout history. But again, my real point, we still don't know exactly how long the bodyguard was in the room. We have to take these two men's word, one of which says they watched some footage that was never released. That is certainly not sensitive in any way, shape, or form. It's just two men walking into a hotel room and one man walking out after a certain amount of time. Do I believe that Kirsten walked in, handed Chris 2 pills, and walked right out? Hell no. If that was what was on tape, they probably would have released it if it exists. That tells me there's more on the tape than a person just walking in, handing some pills, and walking out. No, that's way too simple, man. That's not real life. Usually. Some things had to be discussed. And again, there's a variance in both reports. A police officer took a report, a head investigator took a report. In one report, it says that the bodyguard goes in to help Chris fix a computer and give pills. The other report says that he just gave pills. So who do I believe? Which are the two reports that don't match? Who do I believe regarding this footage that no one's ever seen, that's not sensitive at all? Hallway footage in a hotel. What's wrong with releasing that? Anyway, my main point, the reason I wanted to make this video, I talked about how Kirsten was tight-lipped in the interview with the police officer, the head investigator. I don't think anyone could deny that. We got the very basics of basic facts. He made a point, and that's fucking obvious, to say as little as possible. And these are police. I don't really want to hear about NDAs again, because I don't think that's the reason. I know people are going to throw that out there, though. It's bloody obvious that he wanted to say as little as possible. Then let's fast forward to years later. 3 years later, we hear nothing from this bodyguard man. He doesn't go on Good Morning America or anything like that and tell his story. He doesn't write a book that I'm aware of. Stays pretty fucking quiet except for a few comments here and there on social media, and I mean a few, not many. Might as well have gone into like hiding for a few years publicly from the public life. That's what it seemed like anyway. So 3 years later, he decides, okay, my cult leader or my spiritual guide or my pastor or whatever you want to call him wants to be a televangelist, and he wants to do, he needs something to get his name out there. He needs something that, you know, the world hasn't seen yet. So I'll give him an interview. He was obviously talked into that by some people. I guarantee he didn't want to do it. He probably felt some allegiance or felt that he owed some people in this group he had joined, this church. This church in quotes. So remember when he did that interview, I mean, you thought the reports with the police were bad as far as, I'm going to say as little as possible. And what does that usually mean when someone goes that route? I'm going to say as little as possible. That means they have something to hide. Every time. That's what I take from it anyway. And, but, you know, in this case, the head investigator is asking as little as possible, too. So, there was no challenge there. There was no, like, you know, give me more. You're not going into enough detail. Nothing like that. Oh, no. No pressure. Nothing. Remember again, he did the interview 3 years later. I mean, this could, if this was a novel, people would be like, this story's fucking ridiculous. This bodyguard guy that was the last person in the room to see the rock star alive doesn't say shit for 3 years, says hardly anything in the reports, the police reports. 3 years later, he does a fucking weird-ass cringe interview with where he comes off as a pure robot, says hardly anything, shows no emotion, nothing, talks about his men's Bible group, blah, 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 blah. Gives no details about Chris Cornell. The subject is brought up towards the end of the video because that's the big money shot, right? Bring that up. That's what the pastor wants. He wants this fame from this Kirsten fellow. He's hoping this interview will become a big deal and it'll help propel him to be that televangelist he wants to be. And I'm not exaggerating. It's obvious that's what he wants to be. He cites certain televangelists that are his like mentors. I'm not joking here. Yeah, so again, if I wrote a novel like this, you wouldn't believe it. And it's called Spirit Farm. That's the outlet that put this interview out. Spirit Farm. Yeah, you heard me right. That's okay. And then if like that sounds like a novel, right? Some author would write that. Yeah, let's call it Spirit Farm. That's cringe and fucking spooky, isn't it? And the guy doesn't even say Chris Cornell's name. I'm talking about the bodyguard, the subject of the interview. Not once, not one nice thing about him. Not he was a nice guy. He was great to work for, great singer. He was so talented. Such a shit. Nothing at all. Says the absolute bare minimum. Nothing. And don't tell me he would have got sued for saying Chris Cornell was a nice guy and I enjoyed working for him. Please save your dignity. Don't tell me he would have got sued for that. Hell no. There'd be no grounds for any fucking lawsuit. And he wouldn't be revealing any personal information by saying that. So we got super tight-lipped in the interview that night by the police. That indicates something to me that helps me form an opinion. An opinion. Again, and I'm going to repeat it one more time. An opinion. I'm saying that for a reason. Then the interview 3 years later with the Spirit Farm guru person, trying to get fame and fortune for himself and his church. Says nothing. Not even Chris was a nice guy. So the tight-lippedness in both instances, even 3 years later, tells me something. It helps me form an opinion. I find it suspect. That's my point.